Now that we have the handy illustrated guide out of the way, let's continue. Oh, oh! I heard Denton's anguished wails. Oh, hurry, man, damn you! Make the gashes come, sir! Oh, I can't take it, please! Mercy, miss! But the thong of Miss Arbiter's whip cracked pitilessly against the young man's bear. His squirming conveyed to my own cock through the shivering scythe blade. I heard Miss Florence gasp, and her loins began to writhe. Then she cried out. The crotch of her corselet dripped with her juices, and my tongue could feel the clitty throbbing as though begging for relief. I fastened my teeth on the distended nubbin and began to chew through the satin, making her writhe and scream out as finally she erupted in her spasm of pleasure. I felt a stirring in my cock. The scythe moved, pressing against my balls and shaft. I looked up and saw Denton's bare body a mass of black and blue welts from shoulders to buttocks, and that his cock was stirring. Uh-oh. I wailed. Miss Arbiter ceased her flogging and pressed her own shaven quim to my mouth, muzzling me, but not to make me lick her. Rather, she wished to pinion me in place. Unable to move, trapped by her fragrant, naked belly, I glanced past her rippling haunches to see the flogged body of Denton and his cock rising fast. We have a ticking time bomb here, guys. The scythe was razor sharp against my balls, pressing closer and closer as his stiffening cock raised it. I whimpered and sobbed into the perfumed hillock of Miss Arbiter's mound, begging, please, please. And as I yelped in pure terror, she laughed aloud and pulled me to my feet, loosening the horrid wire that bound me. Oh, miss, I cried, that was crueler than any whipping. Then you shan't mind another, she said smugly, for I think Denton's risen cock has earned him his revenge. You took such a long time in pleasuring us. He is quite raw. Denton was released from his pulley. Oh, I forgot to add that into my illustration. Shit. He was on a pulley. He was on his tiptoes. Let's do a refresher. So Denton is marked with the D. So just imagine that he is hoisted up by his hands above the ground, so his toes are just barely brushing it. This was described in a previous video. And yeah, that's an added bonus that I forgot to add. So he was released from his pulley and stood before me, his cock now as stiff as mine, and the same tears of agony streaming on his cheeks. But there was fury in his eyes. Your fault, he said. My lashes. Your doing, sir. Scoundrel. Miss Arbiter threw him one of the bamboos, still warm from my wheeled fesses, and told me to bend over just as schoolboys did. A little play acting, she said. Denton, you shall be the prefect and punish this whelp for his impertinence. A hearty 3 dozen on the bear. I looked at the faces of my several mistresses, as I now thought of them, and not one failed to grin her approval. I saw that my mistress had her fingers trapped in her fingers trapped in Miss Bernice's naked slit. However, Bernice does have the Gandalf beard mink going on, which, again, was previously described. So how it's naked now, I'm assuming, is only referring to clothing and not to the shavenness. But either way, Florence's fingers are up in there. And was obediently masturbating her on Bernice's direction, though Miss Florence blushed a little as her friends open dominance. They're gal pals. They're friends. They're not lesbians. We can't have that. I mean, how many times has it been described that Miss Florence has sapphic tendencies? Sappho herself knows this is gay. It's gay. They're not friends. It's gay. Bernice urged her on with little spanks to her satined bum. Miss Florence looked at me and nodded as I should obey, and I bent over and touched my toes. "You impudent bugger," spat Denton. "You nasty, prying pervert, sir." I felt the bamboo again on my bare nates, much more painful than before, for it landed across both buttocks at once, and I sensed the harsh savagery of a male hand behind my beating. I had taken such punishment at Eppingham, without protest or murmur, and was resolved to do so again. The strokes rained on me, not very expertly, but with harsh force. "Squirm, you bugger," hissed Denton. "Wriggle your arse for me." But I did not wriggle, though my bummed corn-cob hurt terribly at each stroke. I left out the corn-cob in my illustration as well. I have failed all of you. I stood panting at the pain of the caning, but determined to take it like a man. Under a male's beating, I felt my cock soften and shrink to limpness, and Miss Arbiter noted this with disapproval. I looked round and saw that Denton's member was hard as a rock as he flogged me, but I took the 3 dozen without squealing or squirming, and as he threw down his cane in disgust, my cock now dangled fully soft, and Miss Arbiter said there seemed only one way to get me in correct position for my true punishment. "Admit that you liked being buggered by my corn-cob," she sneered. I sobbed that it was too humiliating, and at that she exploded in fury. Now I was to receive a real beating, and confess the truth, that I loved buggery. Miss Arbiter ascended a ladder. We have a ladder now. My ankles were trussed, and I was hoisted to the ceiling so that I hung upside down with my legs splayed and each ankle fastened far apart. She now roughly withdrew my corn-cob, which hurt, and replaced it with the thick, long knob of the scythe. With the thick, long knob of the scythe's handle, thrusting it brutally into my anus to almost its full depth. It was not painfully gnarled like the corn-cob, but its very smoothness seemed more brutal because of its menacing size, and the ease with which it penetrated my tender membrane. I squirmed and squealed, and in response she spat on my balls. Then she fastened a thin wire very tightly around my balls and my flaccid cock, knotting it to the same point as my chain, but leaving it with some slack. I was given a rope to hold, and this was hoisted as well, so that my body dangled at an angle, with my bottom exposed for chastisement, but to my horror, if I let go of the rope, I should fall to vertical, that is, upside down, and the wire binding my balls would snap tight as any executioner's noose. Wow. Let's leave it there. That's. We're gonna need another illustration here. I mean, that's just. I feel like. I mean, all the other things, my entire playlist up to this point has been tame, boring as shit compared to this. And I really hope that this, I mean, the momentum has started. It really has. And I fear for Roger, as I always do. But, you know, this is, I guess, just part of his training to become an English gentleman.